really, we've known each other for a few years through Danielle's editor, and then we sort of transferred over to working together. After me being fascinated by her books, we started working together last year. But I'll leave Danielle to introduce herself more fully, because she always says something different that I don't know about her every time I hear her introduce herself. So I'm not going to spoil it. I want to hear what you have to say.
Well, thank you. I think our connection sort of deepened when I came to the London Writers Club, actually, and I was at one of your events in London, and yeah, I was really inspired by what you were doing, and that led then to us kind of taking the relationship further and for you to become my agent. So yeah, for any wannabe authors, I would definitely recommend the London Writers Club. So a little bit about me. So my name's Danielle North, and actually one of the things I've discovered along the way is that if you change your name once you've written a book, it does add some complexity into things. And so I've actually had 3 different surnames and never been married, which is quite a feat, I think. So yeah, I think I'll stick now to Danielle North, but some of you might remember me as Danielle Marchant, and if you went to preschool with me, you would have known me as Danielle Donald. So yeah, I've had a few different names over the years. Founder of Pause Global. I've been working with people for over 20 years now in various different forms, and Pause Global is designed to offer retreats and coaching for busy business leaders. And yeah, we're here today to talk about Pause in a bit more detail, and writing Pause and what that process was like, along with the other books that I've written subsequently.
We just start with, actually, I know what a trifecta is in racing. It's when you get 3. But with your book, Pause, you got 2 in a row, because what you managed to do is you managed to get a banging premise, which is you can pause, with a fantastic title, which is Pause. So it's often difficult to get your premise and your concept into your title, but you somehow managed it. So which came first? Did the premise come first, or did the title just float to you in a meditation?
Well, Pause already existed. So Pause was something that I was had already birthed in the form of the retreats. So in terms of the book title, it was a bit of a no-brainer. But how Pause originally came to me was, well, very, very originally, it came when I was reading a book by Alice Walker, and it was a collection of essays that she had written. So one of my favorite authors, and I was looking through this book, and she referenced the I Ching, which is a Chinese book of divination. And in the I Ching, they talk about hexagrams, and one of the hexagrams she referred to in her essay, she was writing about the idea that, you know, if we don't stop and pause, then eventually life has to do it for us. And it was this particular hexagram in the I Ching. And this was pre me burning out. So I was living in Singapore at the time. I was completely burning the candle at both ends, let's just say that. And when I read that piece in the book, it didn't really resonate with me. It didn't really hit home. It didn't sort of, you know, get into my bones at that point. And then after I'd burnt out and I was back in England and recovering, I had this recollection of reading this piece, and this idea of pause came into my mind. And I just thought, what if we had something that was 3 full stops in the year? What if there was a place you could go? What if there was the opportunity to be able to pause? You know, and you could come once, you could come twice, or maybe you need to come 3 times, but there was this option to pause. And so the retreats actually came long before the book, and the idea of pause had surfaced and emerged through this sort of idea that was generated from reading this piece in a book a long time ago.
Wow. See, there you go, because what made me decide to get into publishing was meeting Alice Walker at a book festival.
I read a post that you had on your, I think I read it on your website actually the other day, yes. So there's a fascinating
You see what I mean about shutting up and letting you speak? I come up, you know, I find something new about you. So, okay, pause, but when it comes to writing a book, it's go, go, go. And also you already had a go, 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 less so than in Singapore, but you had a go, go, go life. So how did you make space while also being able to pause and do the right thing by yourself in that way?
Well, there's the vision of how I thought I would make space, and then there's the reality of what actually happened. So in my mind, what I wanted to do was find a wooden cabin in the woods and retreat totally from the world and sit in nature and sit in meditation and sit in tranquility and write from that place. What actually happened was that I was living in London. I had to move house like really fast. I ended up taking a friend's flat that was above a boisterous family of boys. I think they had at least 3 boys, maybe 4 boys that were living down there. I think to cope, the dad just chain smoked. He worked night shifts. In the daytime, he chain smoked. So there was this sort of smell of cigarette smoke that would rise through the floorboards. And I sat there for 2 weeks just writing. And it was a completely different experience to the way that I'd visioned it.
That's fantastic.
I think I learned that actually, when the time is right, you just have to write. And at that point, although the conditions didn't feel how I imagined them to be, the time was right to write. And so, yeah, that's what I did.
How did you know that the time was right to write? How did you know that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, for me, there's always a tension between that lovely space when you're just gathering and gathering and gathering. And I spent quite a lot of time gathering ideas, gathering myself, gathering my experience and my own understanding of what pause was and what it wasn't. So that period of time was quite a long period of gathering. And what made the time right really was it contractual, an agreement with a publishing house that says, it's got a deadline. It's going to be this date that you need to submit your manuscript. But just before we had that, before the contract was in place, I can remember a conversation with Kate, who was my editor for all of the books that I've written. And we were sitting in a cycling shop in London, like a little cafe in a cycling shop, and I'd had a piece of research given to me. A friend of a friend just sent this piece of research, and it was all about what the coming trends were going to be for the following year. So it was very high level research, and in that it had pause kind of all over it, and it was quite clear that pause was about to become a trend. And so that piece of research really, I remember sitting in the cycling cafe with Kate, and I'm neither of us cycle, by the way, I don't think so.
I was wondering that.
But we just looked at this piece of research and we went, okay, the time's right now, because we'd been in conversation for at least 18 months, if not 2 years prior to that, with that gathering process. And when we read the research, we both universities said, okay, we need to move, and we need to move now. And then there is an acceleration of the process. And how do you know the time is right? It's a sort of a combination, I think, of gut feel and logic. It's the two coming together. It was that sense in my stomach, it's time, and then the data coming in, the logic coming in from that piece of research, going, okay, it really is our moment for this. And what was interesting when Kate submitted the proposal, there just wasn't any pushback. Everybody was going, yes.
They just got it. They just grabbed it and understood it. Yeah, that's the other thing about timing, isn't it? It's you don't have to push as hard. It just floats through it feels like it floats through the acquisition meeting. I remember because Kate and I, your editor, used to work together at Penguin Random House, and we used to kind of be like naughty schoolgirls complaining sometimes, because you work really hard on a pitch and a proposal, and then you take it into the meeting, and if they really got it instantly, they just grabbed it from the air. And
who are the they, Jacq?
They, sorry, yes. I can see the acquisitions room, but you can't. Thank you for pulling me up on that. So the accountant, the publicity director, the marketing director, the publisher, all the booksellers, not the booksellers, sorry, the sales director, all of the people who are going to take the book after you and make it really work, like doing the marketing and PR and selling it into Smiths and Waterstones and the like, and talking to Amazon and doing all the dirty work, what I would call the dirty work. So they, you need to convince them, because they're going to have to in turn pitch your book elsewhere. So that's why it's so important. And if you got it right, if you had your premise and your concepts so neatly wrapped into the title, and the time is right, like it was for your book, they'd just grab it and you would barely get a sentence out. You just say the title and they'd already say, oh yeah, fine. And you think, all that wasted work. But in a way, we laughed as we complained, because of course we had what we wanted. It's just that we needn't have put in those days of work. You never know which one's going to be like that and which one's going to have to push really hard. Sometimes it's the blindingly obvious ones that they're like, what?
Yes. I mean, for me, I think the work beforehand was really important for myself, because that was the groundwork for the writing. That's what made the process of the writing eventually happen over a 2-week period, was because we'd spent nearly 2 years preparing to write the book. But there have been other proposals that have gone in that, as you say, just haven't quite hit the spot for people, and that could be a timing issue, that could be a premise issue, that could be a title issue. There could be all sorts of reasons why the folks in the room, I've never been into one of those meetings before, why people might say yes or no to a pitch and a proposal.
No, it's fascinating stuff, isn't it? It really is. For me, the key is, do you want to be hanging around with this material for a couple of years? Because as you know, you've got to conceive of it, gather, research, write, edit, which can be the real killer, then stand back and you get the book deal and wait for it to be published in kind of 18 months time, usually 12 to 18 months time. So, and then you got to, when you think you can forget about the painful process that might or might not have been writing, you then have to promote the book. So it's a long time to hang around with the subject, isn't it?
Yes.
How did that?
But for me, pause is my life's work, so I had a long time, and so that wasn't an issue for me. I had the time. The smaller books that I've written after, I call them the smaller ones, but things like sleep meditations and morning meditations and pause every day, those books, I didn't need to hang around with the content for a long time beforehand. They were written in a much shorter way. Yes, that's one thing. But
also they're gift books, so the kind of packaging does the selling rather than the author in this kind of concept. I mean, they're just stunning, absolutely stunning books.
I'm very lucky that the publishing house takes such care over all of that artistic aspect of the books, because they really do produce beautiful books.
They do, and your publisher being Octopus and the Aster imprint of Octopus. So tell us about, you hinted, and before we started I did tell people, warning, there's a free workshop offer at the end of this free workshop or event, that there was going to be a meditation offering. So how did that come into the writing process? How was that useful?
Well, I think one of the things for me around the meditation is actually the connection to the dreams. So for me, I look at the day and the morning as a connected whole, and what I do in the morning with my meditation allows me to connect into the dreams that I had the night before. Actually, last night's dream's still lingering around today. It's been one of those that just kind of still, wanting my attention today. But also the meditation allows me to have the dreams at night. Like, there's a connection. The more that I stay in the meditation process, the more that allows me to connect into the dreams that I have at night. And why is that important? Because I think the dream gives such amazing guidance. It gives such valuable information. So I've had dreams that have told me that it's not the right time to write, for example. So when you were saying, how do you know it is the right time to write? There was a point where I really thought that I wanted to write, and I really was trying to get, a concept and a premise put together, and then the dream was just saying it's not the time, it's that I was rushing it, that it's too soon. So you can get a lot of information through the dreams, and for me that's the connection to the meditation process. And then of course I think the other side of it is the more that you can stay connected to yourself, the more access you have to your creativity. Now, some people will just have a constant stream of creativity and ideas and inspiration, and almost it's like hard to stem that dam of creativity. I wouldn't say I'm that sort of person. I think my creativity is quite measured, I suppose, a bit like I am. So, when I'm meditating, it just allows me to access my creative energy and my creative inspiration more fully. And it helps me to pay attention to the signs and stay tuned into what's going on in life around me, which was what pause was all about. Like, how do you keep following the signs? How do you keep listening to life? How do you keep responding to what's in front of you? Because for me, actually, that's amazing material. Your experience that you're having in your life and all of the information that's coming to you through the everyday and through the spiritual realm, I think gives such interesting information to write about.
Gosh, how do you capture that? I mean, because in a meditation, it's you pull yourself out of it if you start taking notes. How on earth did you practice?
I don't.
You don't. So
no.
what do you do? How do you remember it? How do you capture it?
I don't
need at all.
No, it's not about needing to remember anything really for me, but I appreciate other people might have an experience where they're getting downloads and they're getting maybe chapter titles or content or that sort of thing. That doesn't happen for me. Like,
you've got a fire under your cauldron. That's what you get.
Yeah, for me it's about my way of being. Like, it facilitates who I am, and therefore my ability to be open and responsive to life and to the information that's coming in on a day-to-day basis. So it allows receptivity for me, because there's nothing worse than trying to sit and look at a blank page, particularly when you're writing, you're faced with a blank page. What do you do? So if we can stay open and receptive to what's coming in from life, everything we need's given to us. And in your example, it comes as a download. I know we were talking the other day and you shared something that's like, well, where did that come from? And it was a download that had come in. I don't receive the information in that way, but the meditation helps me stay connected and receptive in order that I can write from that place. So I think it will be different for different people ultimately, but staying connected and true to you, I think is really important as a writer.
It's really interesting, because for me, that the Big Magic book was really useful, because she talks about this kind of river of creativity, and there's some stuff you should just let pass by, or you might pick something out but you put it back. That's something that I've really had to learn. But probably, though, I could use the meditation to once I was underway with the idea. But I probably use it as a sort of a way of posing questions prior to sleep or prior to meditation. Is that the kind of thing that you do?
You could do that, absolutely. And for some people, it will be simply about being still enough to create more space, because that's one of the questions people talk about, like, how do you find the time to write? And when you're busy and you're kind of full up inside, if you can meditate and create space, then actually it's not that you've got any more time, you've got more capacity. And as a writer, really, you need the capacity to be able to take what's coming in, whichever way it comes to you, whether it's through your imagination, through your gut, through your dreams, through your interactions with other people, through looking at architecture, whatever it is that is stimulating your creativity. Somewhere you have to have the capacity to take that and translate it into the written word. And I think meditation for me creates that space and that capacity that goes, okay, yep, I can sit and commit, because I'm not a full-time writer. I I somewhat envy people whose career is simply writing. That I say simply, but their career is writing. That isn't my reality. That's not my world. I know, listening to Elizabeth Gilbert, and she talks about, she sits down every morning and her job is to write. Like, that's what she's called to do. That's what she's here to do. Mine's about, how do I fit it in?
Yes, yeah. And you get less help as a non-fiction writer of books than a journalist does. So journalists, which my partner is one, they have sub-editors who take their copy and cut it in half and rewrite it. That's what he's doing in his little room every day. But you don't get that help until you deliver the book, generally.
No, although I think the publishing house might have regretted that with the first one.
Yeah, but it's hard. I mean, they don't give you any guidance, really. I mean, you were lucky in Kate. She's a very good editor, and she gave you lots of help with structure and that sort of stuff. But every agent, every editor is completely different. And I think it's just to have that really open, honest conversation, isn't it? It's like, what are we going to do? Which is kind of where you and I are at now, because this will be the Morning Meditation is the first book we did together, but the next book is new IP. It's going to be something that needs more development. So we haven't yet negotiated what that journey is going to look like yet, because we don't know who the editor is going to be. Your editor's left, which happens a lot in publishing, because there's a lot of ladies in publishing, and ladies have babies and move on so that's an extra reason they move on, other than those that men move on for, and just non-gender specific reasons for moving on. So it's an interesting thing. I reckon the reason Pause is a bestseller was because there is a trifecta. It's the perfect marriage of IP, premise and concept being one thing, and the title. All three things were doubling then tripling in strength, and so you got three things that are all pushing in the same direction for you once you'd written that and got that content lovingly edited and designed. But I mean, that strikes me as the reason. What do you feel? And obviously that you meditated to a space where it was all coming from the right place as well, the content.
Well, I think it was really it was the right time, and when I wrote the book originally, I was concerned about word count. Actually, I was like, how does a first-time writer actually get 50,000 words on a page? Like, that just seemed like a massive mountain to me, and I had been practicing for about a year or so writing blogs, so I'd never really done any I hadn't even written a dissertation for uni. Like, I'd never done any big pieces of writing before, and so I started with these blogs that were turning out to be 750 words every time I wrote them. So for a year I was writing these blogs, and they were 750 words every single time. I was like, okay, I can write 750 words, but how am I going to get to 50,000 words? That was a really big question for me, and eventually that didn't turn out to be a problem, because I think what I would say is a tip for any book is the structure is really important, and I was lucky to have help with creating the structure from Kate, and then writing to the structure actually meant that it was possible to just keep talking about these different topics, and in the end what I think really helped the book work was that the editing team actually stripped out 20,000 words from it. Wow. So we stripped it right back, or they stripped it right back. It was a collaborative decision to take out, because what we were trying to do was create this experience of space. And the reason that I was doing that is because of what you talk about with the title. And I remember reading or picking up Calm, which was a really beautiful cover. I don't know if you remember the book that went with the Calm app. It had such a beautiful tactile cover. It was a lovely blue color. It really hit the spot. And then you opened it up and it was crazy busy. inside, and I just remember going, hold on, this isn't calm. So we really wanted to create a sense of calm with pause. You know, we wanted the spaciousness, and so stripping out the 20,000 words really got it to be succinct and coherent. But also, I remember Kate read it multiple times, and every time she read it, she was breathing her way through the manuscript. So as well as kind of my own meditation practice, she breathed her way through the manuscript and was looking at, how do you put space into this book? And so it was a stripping back of the manuscript that I think really helped it to become a bestseller, and also because of the way that it was illustrated. So, you know, it was literally, space was put in, you know, like how many books will a publisher print with blank pages in them? You know, we had so much, you know, big margins, empty pages. Beautiful. The whole thing was designed with space in mind, because we wanted it to feel like a breath, because the strapline at the time for pause was, it's the breath that you've been dying to take. And so we wanted it to feel like a breath. And so, you know, how you can take your title, how you can take your premise and then infuse it all the way through your content and your being, you know, if your work is about your being as well, which it won't be for every, you know, for every writer, but if it's your work is about your being, then it has to be infused through the whole piece.
It's so important. That's such an important point that you raise, because I think sometimes it can be really disappointing when you get to the, you know, you've got your book due, you've done all the writing, you get to the publication process, and it's just, the book just doesn't reflect, doesn't embody all the principles and all the feel, you know, the mood, the atmosphere that you want to. So that's such a brilliant point. What a great experience you had then the first time, despite the fact that you were like, oh, you know, haven't even written a 10,000 word dissertation, how the bloody hell am I going to do this? You had a really good experience, which is great. No wonder you popped 2 more out in quick succession.
Yes. Well, I'd always wanted to be a writer. Like, that was the thing that, well, in fact, when I was about 5 years old, anybody who would ask me, I would say I want to be an author when I grow up. And it was specifically the word author. It was very much in my dharma, I think, to write. But yeah, for me, having the right editor at the time really supported that process. Somebody who understood what pause was about and had a vision for it as a book, where I perhaps didn't at that time, and had the experience to be able to convert what was inside of me into, you know, into something that was beautiful. That was important. So yeah, very good experience.
I hope what people are hearing is that there's so much that goes into it. You know, people talk about writing and they talk about getting published, but there's so much that goes into it before you even really start to push the pen or the pencil. You know, there's so much, as you say, kind of hanging around, ruminating, staring at the sky. You know, all that is part of writing, and it's just, you know, thinking, what do I want this to be? How can I? What do I see it being? You know, what do I feel it's going to be? It's all the bringing all the senses into it as well, isn't it? You know, just kind of.
For me, yes, but also it was about relationship building too. So it was building relationships with people, one around pause and the work that we were doing. So building the relationship with people who were coming to experience pause because I was learning through them what this was, but also the relationship, for example, with Kate, to be able to, you know, have a trusted advisor along the way. And the relationship with the publishing house, because although I never sat in one of those meetings, I did meet some of the people that you were talking about who would be around the table. So yeah, there was much more to it than sitting and writing.
Yeah. And I don't know if people grasped yet, there are 3 books so far: Pause, then Sleep Meditations, and have we got a Tadawa moment for your book?
Yeah,
just published?
Well, there are 4 actually.
Sorry.
Pause every day, and then we have sleep meditations and morning meditations. So yeah, this is the partner book actually for sleep meditations. So I wrote Sleep, and that was published last year. There's a great image here. And then I wrote Morning Meditations afterwards. And again, these books, it's interesting, these books felt like a totally different writing experience to Pause. So as you described, they're gift books. So this was much more about creative play for me. This didn't feel like I needed to bring my soul out of my body onto the page. This very much felt like a creative exercise, a creative play for me. And so these are really fun books to write, and really, for me, like the best kind of writing that I could do, really, because it's so enjoyable. And when I wrote Sleep Meditations, we actually launched it when all of the restrictions were happening last year, which is not a great time to do a book launch. So it's been so nice to have Morning Meditations come and join it, and actually to launch the two together, because this felt like the other half of Sleep Meditations, that I needed the two to be together. It's funny how they're actually a symbiotic relationship, these two books, and partly that was because even though you would expect in Sleep Meditations that you could talk about the dream, like I was mentioning earlier, and the morning meditation rituals, I couldn't do that in Sleep Meditations. So I needed Morning Meditations to be able to fill that gap. And so in this book, I talk much more about the importance of dreams, the importance of your morning meditation ritual. And in that book, I'm able to really kind of go into detail about those rituals, which for me was there was a tension inside of me until that book was written, didn't get released. It's like, oh, okay, now I've done it. I got the whole message out rather than half of the message, which was a bit of a relief. So relieved the angst.
And I think that's really common. Often I get people who come to me and they're writing a book, and actually they're writing 2 or 3 books. And I think often the idea for your next book comes as an irritation when you're writing the first book, and a distraction. It's like, shush, shush, shush. Yes, I'll write you later. Shush for now, please. So, having another Word document over, you can just dump stuff. Go, okay, I'm calling that book 2 or book number, whatever it is, But I would say, Danielle, it's I think, and this is a conversation for you and I to have separately, obviously.
Saying that's
rather than publicly.
A big problem.
But I think that you can bring the gift approach to writing books to this next big book, because I think part of it is about I'm writing a book. Whereas with the smaller books, it felt like this beautiful expression of an idea, rather than a book where you have to deliver everything you've got to say. I mean, we've got time. We, as humans, we've got time to move to another book. We don't have to give everything away in a book that we write. And I think often we do want to do that. I mean, I speak as someone who normally, drive myself crazy when I had to write my book, because I thought I had to reinvent the whole world of how to write a bestseller.
Yes,
And you don't.
I think it's a really good point, because if I were to write Pause now, it would be a very different book to the one that I wrote 5 years ago, because I'm a different person in a different place. So I'm actually really glad that I captured that book when I did. But it's not the end of the story, and it's not the end of the messaging, really. And so that I think there is a sense of be okay with where you are and with what you're writing now. I definitely have loads of unfinished, proposals for ideas that haven't gone anywhere yet. But I think that's part of the creative process. You have to trust the mess of that, and log it. And I mean, I accumulate all of these things, and they sit there. And maybe one day they'll turn into something, and maybe they won't. But it's the idea that you breathe the life into at that time that is the idea that really counts and really matters for you. And I think seeing that process through is the momentum to then see the next one through, or the next one through, because I didn't set out to write full books, but you know, one just felt like a massive mountain for me. When I realized that I just needed to write blogs, basically, I needed to break the book down. If I could write 750 words, then I just needed to write, you know, a set number of blogs, and then I would have a book. So that helped my thinking when I could break it down like that. And yeah, maybe there is too much pressure that I'm putting on myself for the next one to be like the big one, as it were. the kind of,
everyone does it.
Yeah.
Everyone does it, but it's kind of like the big one for now is what I like to always think of it as.
Yeah.
But I do think that the kind of the premise is really important. So just to give you an example, so for my book, when I was asked by Aster to write a bestseller, and I thought, my God, there's so many smart people out there who've written similar books before, and there are amazing agents who are 30 years older than me back then, who are incredible. What I got to contribute to this argument, and so the premise was, write a bestseller. This is how you write a bestseller, and that felt. When I asked myself what was wrong with that premise, the answer was, well, you're not someone who goes around acting important, and that statement is a very important one. So what do you do? And what I do is ask lots of questions. So I reframed it as, in my head, it was, is it possible to write a bestseller? Yes, if you do this. Probably not if you do this. And so that completely unblocked everything for me. So it's, it can be, and that's a meditative approach really as well, isn't it? I suppose to inquire,
it's an inquiry. Yeah, absolutely. To ask the questions is an inquiry, and I think that's important. And also to take steers from people in the industry. What I realized was I didn't have to do this alone. And I think originally I was sitting there, with my dream of writing a book, and it looking like a very lonely process. But actually, in reality, it takes a team, or for me, it took a team to be able to bring a book to fruition. And there are so many people who've got much more expertise about what's going on in the marketplace, what titles are selling, what trends are happening at this time. What is it that they're looking for as a publishing house to be able to fill the gaps in the market. And so that's before you even get to the editing expertise and this beautiful, for me, the illustration expertise and all of that kind of great support that comes with it, the PR expertise. There's a whole team around to help with the process, and for me that felt really supportive. I think, I do feel very blessed to have had that kind of help.
Yeah, it's a massive thing. Shall we open it up to some questions? So if you could put your questions in the Q&A, please, rather than in the chat, because the Q&A is much easier to handle and we can both see that. So go ahead. I'll see if there's any questions already in the chat, but please do start asking questions in the Q&A box. Things have changed a lot actually in publishing. It used to be that editors did a lot more editing, but these days they don't have as much time for editing because they're expected to do a lot more kind of running around trying to make the book work and encourage the author to do a lot more of their own marketing. And they are also asked to do a lot more titles than they were in the past. So a lot of the responsibility for kind of checking the idea is working sort of fell back onto the agent. But then agents also felt like they were getting pushed, because what was happening is advances were getting lower, and then so that pushed things back onto the author and often made them feel more alone. And now the author had less funds with which to hire an independent kind of editor because the advances were low. So it's been a funny, crazy time, and I think it will settle down a bit. But I think what doesn't harm anyone is to do their own research and to do their own reading, and to perhaps form a buddying group, find somebody, find support, as well as be really clear when they're going to a publishing house and to an agent what kind of help they're going to get from that agent and publishing house. So John is asking, can you see this, Danielle? It's a fascinating discussion. Can I ask Jacq how the approach of children's authors finding an agent and getting published may be different to Danielle's experience? Very similar. You do need to find an agent, definitely. You do need to know the market really well. You do need to know what you're writing, be really clear that it fits the right category. So you can't write a children's book and pitch a children's book if you don't read children's books, if you don't understand them, if you don't understand the different categories like YA and I can't even remember what they are myself off the top of my head, because you might notice that children's books don't have ages on them anymore. What do they call it? Picture books, and I'm not a children's book person, but it's very similar. Obviously, there aren't as many words. You need to think about how you want the book to look. You don't necessarily need to have an illustrator or have the illustrations done, but you need to think about how that might go hand in hand with illustrations. I hope that's helpful. Casey is asking you, Danielle, I'm curious how you capture other ideas that might distract you as you're busy writing something.
Yeah, I keep it really simple, just have a Word document. I've tried all sorts of different approaches over the years, Casey, from Evernote to Scrivener to just keeping it logged in my brain, which is the worst thing I can do. So yeah, a good old-fashioned Word document, and that's how I write my books as well now. Just go straight into an open Word document and off we go. I keep it really simple.
Brilliant, that's what we want to hear. Carl's asking, did you sell your books to publish as a series or one by one as individual books?
Yeah, good question. So it's been done on a one by one basis.
It would have been nice for the meditations book to be sold in a chunk, but they just didn't know what they were doing in terms of how well they would do. And
no, and I think when we started the meditation books, we talked about what the series would be. So in my mind, there are another 3 of these books that we could write, but we didn't publish them, or, it wasn't a contract for 5 or 4 or 3, they were individual contracts. But what we have done is kept the format the same and the illustration company the same that are doing the pictures, so that we can turn them into a sequence of books over time, a series of books over time. But yeah, it would have been nice to have done it that way.
Except, it's funny because it sounds great to think, 3-book deal, I know where I am, I can plan my time and energy and all of that, and it sounds oppressive, doesn't it, say I've got a 3 or a 5-book deal. But actually, if you get a deal like that, all the books are accounted for together. So for instance, say you have one book that does incredibly well, this happened to me, and one book that does not so well, the advance, all the monies coming in go against all of the advances rather than one. So so if you have individual contracts, one does really well. So say one suddenly gets made into a movie or gets sold all around the world, it just somehow catches everyone's imagination. You'll get all the money through from that. But if they were all done together, say the other books, suddenly mornings became taboo and no one could talk about them anymore, they had to get rid of that book, the money would go against the advance for that. So I know it's quite hard to understand the whole advance thing, which is why I'm sort of planning this workshop to explain the whole publishing process. So Carl's also saying, is it best to present a series? You can do. I think the best thing to do is to present, yes, a series, but also the books need to work independently. They need to be able to stand alone, which yours do beautifully, Danielle. So if you are presenting a series, they must also be standalone books and not rely upon, all of them being read or being, seen together. I mean, even fiction where the same character goes across a series of books, they do all stand alone equally. They don't, not a problem there. So Sue, Danielle, fascinating talk, thank you. Wondering how much work did you actually have to do after submitting the manuscript, especially the marketing?
Well, the writing bit, which was quite a bit of work, and then it got handed back over to the publishing house who did the editing, and then there's a quiet period then, sometimes up to a year, where there's really not much happening from my side, but there's a lot going on in terms of the book being proofread, the book going to the printers, getting it all ready to go to market. And then normally for me, about 6 weeks before the publishing date, then that's where things will start to warm up again. And then, yeah, we put quite a lot of work into the marketing of the books, because for me, they're part of my business and they're part of my brand. And so they have a key role in actually helping to grow our business. So we want to market the books. And I think that's something that, because of what Jacq was saying at the publishing houses, they're working on so many titles. They get a small window, maybe 2 weeks, where they can really support you with that marketing. The rest of it is promoting and keep putting your books out into the world. So we did our own book launch for Morning Meditations this year, and that was a really lovely experience, and I'm really happy we did that. And yeah, and then we keep finding ways to communicate what we're doing.
And you keep coming out with really good ideas, because being your agent, I see what you feed through to the publishers, and you keep coming up with ideas, and including engaging the publishing house. So you're saying to the publishing house, you need what I'm offering too. And so you've offered workshops to them, and so they get to really understand what it's all about. And with the sales team particularly, that's really, really
very much so. Yeah, like I know who our sales director is at the publishing house. He knows me. Like, we've got I think the relationships part of writing, it can be underestimated, but it's important to, you know, make time to connect with people, to know who's doing what for you. You know, our foreign rights team, I say ours, I feel like they're mine, but they're not. And the foreign rights team at the publishing house have been incredible. You know, the books got translated into 10 different languages, and I was getting copies of books from countries. I had to go and look up on the map. I was like, how are you doing this? They were getting the books out into the most incredible places around the world. And yeah, you need to know who those people are who are working on your behalf, and have those relationships, so that it's not, you know, I know what Kevin and his team are up to with the sales activity, and it's you know, they work on our behalf. It's amazing what they do. You know, yes, it's their job, but like, I feel invested in them as well.
See, I told you were a star, Danielle, because usually the only authors who know who the sales director is by name and his team are the likes of superstars, you know, film stars, actresses. Rihanna would know her sales director because she'd been invited to the sales conference, you know, and probably sang at the sales conference, you know. But you usually, if you're not the celebrity, you don't know them. And so that's amazing that you made that connection. And I think relationships, I feel a blog coming on just on that subject, because that's really helpful advice. I really hadn't thought about that from the author's point of view before in that way.
Yeah, well, they're an extension of our business. You know, that when you're running a small business, so if you're working in a corporate environment, then you've got all of this amazing support and resource around you. When you're working independently and you're running your own business, you still have all this amazing support around you. You just have to work the relationships in a different way, because they're not just down the corridor. I mean, nobody's just down the corridor these days, are they? But you know, you have to be very conscious. This network of people who are as engine room of people who are supporting a book going out into the world. And, you know, I would actually really love to have been in one of those pitch meetings. That does feel like it's a bit of a gap for me, because I'm interested, like, what is it like around the table? What is it like when you've got a group of people who are making these sorts of decisions? Yeah, I'm really interested in what that process is like. And so, like, how can we be interested in the world around us? This is what I was talking about, the importance of meditation and receptivity. Like, how can we just keep being curious and interested? Because isn't that what feeds our creative process? And you know, and the relationships, from my perspective, really matter.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's really, really fabulous. Over in the chat, somebody said, I can't see who it is now, they said, I remember being told to be ready to show what else you have, quite ready-ish to an agent and a publisher. That's so true. For like fictional and non-fiction, they want to know that you've got more than one book in you, because they're these days, you know, being about a lot about brand, if they can get you to write more books, then each time it's easier to sell not only that book, but to sell the backlist as well. So like anyone coming across Danielle's books now, Sleep Meditations, Morning Meditations, they're like, love this woman, what else has she done? They're like, oh, her big one, pause. I'll grab that. And so sales go backwards, which to what we call the backlist. Backlist is anything that's already been published, and the front list is the stuff that's coming out now that we're currently marketing and talking about now. So John is saying, is networking why Jacq runs the London Writers Club? Yes, it is. It's because I bring an agent. The reason I set up the club was partly because I'm a miserable bastard and really grumpy and get like tired of hearing, oh, I can't get an agent and all that sort of stuff. So I was like, well, I'll bring you one. Every month I'll bring you one, okay? And you have to pitch them, but I will be prodding you in the ribs like I'm your mother, trying to force you into the swimming pool, and I'll be making you pitch. So that's what I do at London Writers Club. But it also came from my Catholic guilt as well, because as an agent, you're constantly saying no. You're constantly saying no, and so if you've got a stack of 100 manuscripts, there might not even be one in there that's ready to be published or represented. And I couldn't bear that. I couldn't bear the saying no all the time. So the club is about keeping the ideas alive and keeping them going. And so that's what that's about. So it's about the miserable and the altruistic side of me. Casey met Felicity True at London Writers Club. Yeah, loads of people have met their agents and their publishers at London Writers Club, and we hope to be getting back to live events soon. Here's one for you, Danielle. Sue, I spent way too long developing my proposal, 30 pages. No, that's not too long. I'm wondering if I've left it too late to submit to agents before Frankfurt. Yes, you have, unless you've got Prince Charles to admit that he really shouldn't have married Diana. You'd be able to get that in front of people to Frankfurt. But right now, they're so stressed, and all the editors and agents are working with what they've currently got to present them to Frankfurt. And also, additionally to that, to make it even harder, Frankfurt itself isn't properly happening either. So
to explain what Frankfurt is for those who, obviously people know it's a country, but it's a city. But what actually happens at Frankfurt from a publishing point of view? Thank
you for reminding me once again. So it's a book fair, and it really is like imagine a tractor trade show. It's like that. It's not really for authors, believe it or not. It's really for foreign deals on the whole, but what's tended to happen is that home country deals can happen. So for instance, agents would be taking staff to Frankfurt Book Fair because it is a high profile place to do a deal, and if you make a deal at the fair, it gets a lot of attention, a lot of chat. So you tend to want to take your really big books that you'll get big advances for, and you'll get lots of editors clamoring for it, which drives up the price, of course, of the book, the advance that they'll pay if more than one person's interested. So it's actually hideous. You get to stay in a nice hotel, okay, but then you have to do things like I used to do as an editor. Like I used to kind of put the TV on and bounce on the bed for about an hour before I could go to sleep, because you were so wired from sitting in an aircon place all day, talking all day long about the same books over and over again, and trying to sell rights for the book across the world. So a lot of the books that are there have already been published as well in the home territory. So say, for instance, Morning Meditations, Danielle, your publisher will be taking that to the fair, and they will be trying to sell Spanish, US, French, rights, so translation rights, and to Australia and those places. So yeah. But so get it together though, and leave it a little while after Frankfurt, when they're all back and had time to catch up on their sleep, and pitch then. But actually remembering they're not going. A lot of them aren't going. So do you know what? Just do it. So just do it, because they're not actually going there. Leave it a week or so then, I'd say. Yeah. I saw another question somewhere, but we need to actually wrap up now. It's gone so fast. It's been so great. I feel like we've extracted a lot from you, and you still look as fresh as the beginning. So could you tell us about this this free workshop that you're offering in October?
In October, yeah. So we're going to be acknowledging World Mental Health Day, which is in early October, by offering 5 days of morning meditation. So 30 minutes every morning where I'll come on and I'll do a live guided meditation to help people start their day off in the right way. And what we're doing is, for people who work in organisations, we're asking them to share that with their teams so that we can really get a nice large group of people coming in. So if you're interested in that, just put yes in the chat box or put a Y in the chat box, and we can send you some more information. It's totally free to join, and you can start your day in the right way with me.
That's so good. That's so, especially as you're going to autumn, that's such a nice thing to do.
Yeah.
And for me, how you can perhaps connect further with this material is I'm running at the end of October, I'm running a workshop that's all about, you know, the whole process and how you pitch, and just giving everyone a template with all the basics and really getting stuck into that. That will be a paid workshop. It won't be, you know, a really expensive one, but just give us a shout again. We'll email everyone out with a reminder of Danielle's workshop and this one too. And we got your email addresses, so we'll remind you of who we are and what we're doing, and any other things that we're doing that you can latch onto and enjoy. But thank you, it's been brilliant. Oh, Danielle, well done.
Yeah, I've just got that link there for those who were saying yes immediately, so that you've got it, but we'll write to you as well, as Jacq said. And yeah,
brilliant. And we'll send out details of ordering the book as well. So final departing tip for anybody who's desperate to get their book published, of course, find an agent first before they do that. Talk to people, keep the dream alive, and just keep taking small steps towards it. It's definitely a process, and it's one that you have to just keep the fire burning on, and just believe that you can get there, because it's absolutely possible. So brilliant, so brilliant. Thank you, Danielle. I'll be joining you for the morning.
Yes, I think I shall be coming along to your pitch workshop as well, so mutually beneficial.
Can't wait. Thanks so much for sharing all of that. It's as I say, you know, I think I know you, and then I start talking to you and there's so much more that comes out, so it's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
It's been a joy. Thank you.
Take care, everyone, and good luck with your pitching, good luck with your writing. As Danielle said, keep on going and you'll get there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.